Good morning, League fans. And there's something special about this episode on May 15, 2025. And that is the fact that it's airing first in the Southern Hemisphere. Normally our episodes air first in the Northern Hemisphere. My name's Steve Mascord. I'm coming to you from London. But today, 9 a.m, New South Wales, Queensland time, you'll be hearing this episode, and we've got a very special guest coming up, the co-founder and owner of the Jacksonville Axemen, Drew Slover, who's also held senior positions with the USARL. If you follow rugby league beyond the kind of mainstream, you'll know that the game in America has been problematic. You'll also know that there's games in Vegas every year, and Drew's got some really interesting things to say about that. So most of this hour will be dedicated to having a chat to Drew about his own history in rugby league, about the Axemen who are about to enter their 20th year, and about the game's approach to the USA, be it internationals or be it the NRL and Super League games in Las Vegas. But let's catch up with some news, and there's been one game this round in Super League, and it was an embarrassing scoreline if you are a fan of the Catalans Dragons. 40-0 they were beaten in the Thursday night Super League game by St Helens. George Whitby, the young half, had an absolute blinder. Scored 3 tries in the 3rd, 40th and 72nd minutes, and he kicked 6 from 7. The other tries to Alex Wormsley in the 8th minute, Dion Cross in the 37th minute, Tristan Saylor in the 53rd, and Lewis Murphy in the 68th. And the pressure may be sort of releasing a little bit on the coach of St Helens, Paul Wellens. Meanwhile, you'd imagine it's increased by the same amount on Steve McNamara, the coach of Catalans, who had a few things to say about referees, etc. last weekend. But you certainly couldn't be blaming match officials for that. There's a bit happening in news around the world. There's Salford have received a winding up order in Super League. In the Australian game, the Women's State of Origin series has been won for the first time as a series by New South Wales. 26-6 win over Queensland in the wet at Allianz Stadium. Congratulations to the Blues. You're not let us call them the Sky Blues anymore, or I'll get sued by a soccer club. And before we hear from Drew Slover, I think we do this every day. If it's the first time tuning in, we go for birthdays, rugby league birthdays, and there's some big names birthdays today. Johnny Gibbs, former Manly halfback. He was born in 1956. He is 69. 69 today. So congratulations to Johnny Gibbs. Hope you have a good day. Don't work too much today. Joe Vitanza, one of the great Penrith players, who also had a stint at Gold Coast and at Cronulla. 62 today. Phil Clark, England back rower, once on Sky. He is 54 today. Luke DeVico, statue from Canberra, Newcastle, Italy. It's 52 today. Jim Lenihan from Gold Coast also had a run with the Dragons and Huddersfield. That's St George Saints Dragons, not St George Illawarra Dragons. 52. Michael Corey is a good friend of mine. He's a good fella, personal trainer, and played for the Cowboys and Brisbane and Lebanon. It's his 50th. I'll have to send him a message on Facebook. Michael Withers, one of the Aussie who represented Ireland and also played at Wigan and Bradford, and he was at Balmain as well. 49 he is. Who else? Jermaine McGilvray, Jerry, 37, and still going strong. 37 he is. Who else we got here? That's probably enough, really. That'll do, I think. So after the break, you take a break and listen to what's coming up next and I'll go and send Michael Corey a happy birthday message. You're on rugbyleague.com. Don't forget to follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., etc. So as promised, everybody, I think this is a correct, I don't know if he likes this term, owner, but I think he's the owner of the Jacksonville Axemen, Drew Slover. Drew, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great, thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, it's accurate, so I
Ah,
can't complain about it.
and you just heading into your 20th season coming up, which is the reason we're speaking to you. That's a pretty special milestone, isn't it?
Yes, it's it's been a wild ride. I can't believe it's 20 years. I mean, I don't think I've done anything else besides just generally work for 20 years, but you know, it's been fantastic. I owe kind of everything I have to rugby league. So I mean, I wouldn't have met my wife, I wouldn't have my kids, I wouldn't have my business. So I love it, and it's the greatest sport on the planet. So I generally just love it. So it's a good time.
Okay, so let's unpack all that. That'll take us an hour. I mean, where did how did you get introduced to the sport, and what were the origins of the club?
Well, so started so you know Spinner Howland, and or you do, Steve. The audience may or may not, but he was a good friend of mine. I actually met him. I was working in a radio station selling advertising at the time. There was some rugby league activities, and there was a representative game going on, and they wanted to do some advertising on the station. So, long story short, I met Spinner. Spinner and I became friends. And then I went to Australia in 2005 and saw the 25th anniversary of the first game one of the 25th anniversary of State of Origin in Queensland, and it was the coolest sporting experience I've ever had. It's better than Super Bowls. It's better than World Series. It was fantastic, and I didn't know what rugby league was, and so I was 25, and so Spinner was playing in some of the competition was mainly in the Northeast at the time, and so he had said to me, he's like, "Hey, what do you think about the sport?" I'm like, "Hey, man, I love it." He's like, "What do you think about starting a team?" I'm like, "I I'm not doing anything over the summer, so let's do it." And away we went, and the team was born in February of 2006. So, and then we came up with the name. The name took forever to figure out. Um, I think I still have lists of the names that we were kicking around, but the we landed on the Axemen because he had gone and seen the Aurora Valley Axemen in Australia, or he had, I think he played in a tournament down there or something. Anyway, but he's like, "What do you think about that name?" And I liked the way that it rhymed with Jax and Jacksonville, and that was it. So, and long story short, we were well on our way.
We're talking to Drew Slover, the owner of the Jacksonville Axemen, who are about to enter their 20th season. So, was it hard to join the competition, Drew? Like, how did you? It would have been a steep learning curve because the sport at the time was based mainly in the northeast, I guess.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was more of a learning curve for me than I think for anybody else. But I didn't really know what I was doing. Nobody really knew what they were doing. But we were it's amateur level. I wasn't quite prepared for at the time. But it was interesting because we had to raise a significantly more money than anybody else because all of our away trips we had to fly to. We were the southernmost team in the competition at the time, and so um, every away trip was a plane ride. So as you can imagine, those tickets add up pretty fast, and you have to stay overnight. But we made it work. When we played Philly, we would go up and back in one day, which was was a grind, but you just do what you got to do to get through it. So, but
Yeah,
entering the competition wasn't really all that hard. It just when you're a new team, like you've got the challenges of a new team.
mm.
Players don't know the sport. You don't have uh, some of the leadership maybe isn't as solidified as maybe you'd like it to be, or a team that had been around for a couple of years would have. So you just have those kind of challenges.
Who's the best player to have played for the Axemen?
Oh, geez. Um, we've got a lot of them. That we've got. I don't know. It would be hard to say because we've got so many guys that I just love, and
Mm.
um, from an American standard, you've got it's a different perspective for those Australians that are listening. Like, the game isn't quite as evolved, but you know, some of the players that we're playing right now, like David Washington, is one of the staples that has been around, and he has just saved the Axemen so many times.
Mm,
Um, we've got guys like Matt Thornton, who Apple and Taco Pope. Like, there's so many
mm,
players that have gone. I think we've had over 30 USA players play for the
mm,
Axemen. So
mm.
and it's hard because sometimes players come for 1 or 2 seasons, and then their lives take them in a different direction. So maybe their potential isn't there. But there's just been so many players that it would be too hard for me to even to say. But there's definitely plenty of honorable mentions, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Has there ever been a point where the club or points where the club's existence has been in jeopardy, Drew?
I mean, it's one of those where when you're playing an amateur sport like we are, there's always going to be inherent challenges that come along with when you have this kind of environment where there's no funding outside of whatever you're internally raising.
Mm,
So there's always this flux of like what teams are participating, what teams are not. And that's kind of been our biggest challenge. But the team itself, I I don't think that I've had any doubts about it. I mean, at some point I'll have to hang up the boots, and I don't know that I can do this forever. But uh, you know, from a standpoint of, so yeah, I mean, sure, there have been, but like we figured out how to get through it. You always have funding problems, you always have player problems, you always have competition issues, and but the reason we've been around for 20 years is we figured out how to get through it.
mm, mm. We're talking to Drew Slover, the owner and one of the founders of the Jacksonville Axemen. Drew, I just wondered, like, you must have had when you along with having dreams for your club, you must have had dreams for the competition and rugby league in the USA over that period, and you've held positions in the governing bodies. Um, can you just can you reflect a little bit about that kind of what I'd imagine has been very much up and down with quite a few false dawns. I know that we could probably stay on here for 4 hours talking about that,
Easy.
but for the people who maybe don't follow rugby league in the US so closely, how would you describe the journey?
The journey has been long and exhausting,
Mm,
but it's been fun. I mean, look, I think most everybody that's been involved with the sport is in it for the reasons that are the right reasons. They want the sport to grow because they love it.
mm,
The challenge comes in when you have this dynamic of inexperience and uh, naivete,
mm,
where you might have this pie in the sky view, but it's not a practical one.
mm,
And those are the things that kind of and funding, and that's where you run into problems, and not having a good base of individuals that are not players to run organizations and be operators. Like, um, that's where you kind of run into some issues. And that there's been so many people that have kind of come through that I've seen come and gone, come
mm.
back, left. And so it's this kind of constant challenge to try to be a staple and try to be a rock in this whole in the main America for the sport. And
Yeah.
that's what we're trying. That's what I've always tried to do, and I try to uh, offer my opinion or offer my experience to help other teams grow. And sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't, sometimes they act like they want to listen, and they just have their own opinions, and which is fine. Like, they're but I'm of the mentality, like, well, I'm going to learn from somebody else that's done it, so that I don't make those mistakes, because I don't like to do things twice.
How would you sum up why there aren't more clubs like Jacksonville in the US? What's the main reason? I guess you touched on some of them then.
you know, and this is not trying to be too critical, but the thing is, like, there's not a good diverse ownership group with most of these teams. The teams that are successful are the ones that have multiple people doing multiple jobs. Kind of like, when you have like any club, you have someone dedicated to football, you have someone dedicated to business operations. But I've always said that you need a team that to be successful, you have to focus on how do you make and improve the experience for the players, and how do you take and make and improve and create a good experience for fans. And if you can do those two things, like, I think you have a pretty good base to be successful. The problem is there's so many players that love this sport, and they're the ones that are introduced to it. So like they're the first layer of interaction. And so they're the most likely to get involved and say, hey, I want to start a team. And so what happens is then they're focused on playing. Well, the other side isn't the other side of the business, where you're focused on fans and providing a good game day experience and things like that. Sometimes that gets lost. And if teams want to be successful, they have to have a focus on creating an environment that is as professional as you can make it. And so that because what it does is it creates an environment where players say, oh, well, if I have to choose whether I'm going to go play sevens or I'm not going to play this summer or I'm going to do this, if I feel like a legit athlete, and I'm traveling as a team and we're all in the same gear, and I don't have to worry about doing this and doing that, I'm just showing up to play and I have to pay dues and do just that, like, you're going to get a better player. And when you get better players, you have the ability, you're not losing games. And so when you're not losing games, you're building an ability to have to build a fan base. And then you can charge for it, because then you have hopefully you have the assets at the game for someone to go, oh yeah, I'll pay for that. If there's concessions, there's merch, there's an announcer, it's you're trying to put on as professional of a game day experience as you can.
We're talking to Drew Slover, one of the founders of the Jacksonville Axemen, who are about to embark on their 20th season. Drew, I think most people who take an interest in the subject kind of have an idea that around the time of the Toronto Wolfpack and the Ottawa Aces, they're largely forgotten, but that there was some aspirations about crossing the channel and getting involved in the English pyramid. Was that? How do you look back on that? And was it a good idea gone bust? Why did it fall over? Was it just COVID and the fact that the Toronto Wolfpack fell over, so the door was slammed shut? What are your thoughts on is the transatlantic model dead?
I think the Super League those clubs have some internal things that need to be fixed. To me, the biggest opportunity for anybody in this sport is America. We've got the fans, we've got the players, we've got an appetite for sport, and so to me, I don't see why the door certainly shouldn't be shut on it. It's whether or not anybody else is open to that model, and it can make sense. It creates additional exposure for any team that comes to America. It creates a bigger footprint for the sport. It creates an easier foundation for the sport to grow, because you need to have, when you have a professional team setting the standard, it can trickle down a little bit easier than trying to trickle up. From an amateur club standpoint. And then there's a multitude of things that kind of beneficial things that come from having a professional club, but I certainly don't see a problem with it. I think everybody probably very well versed in what seems to be the issues that are plaguing the Super League. But if the Super League were run, if they could get some of those issues worked out, I think it creates an environment that could make that the transatlantic model a very easy possibility and fruitful for everyone.
Yeah, I think if the NRL were to get involved in running the competition here, that they certainly have their eye across the Atlantic as far as expansion goes. And looking at some of the Australian basketball teams who are owned by Americans, that there's clearly people who want to invest in that sort of in these sort of ventures in the US. So I guess an NRL Europe model might be more attractive to investors in the US than what exists in England at the moment. Would that be? Do you think or not? What do you think?
Well, like, what do you mean? Like if the NRL were to expand the Super League across Europe, as in
Well, they said.
versus
I think even it's been said by Shane Richardson on James Graham's podcast that once they get the 10-team competition up and running, that the sort of people who would be interested in joining it wouldn't necessarily be Castleford. You know what I mean? That they, and it wouldn't even necessarily be people in Britain. That they certainly have aspirations in the US, and I think the NRL, will be more open to the transatlantic model now than the existing authorities in the UK.
yeah, I would agree with that. I
Mm.
mean, they certainly seem to be more open to it. I mean, or the fact that they took the initiative and brought teams to America. The question is, like, how do you, like, who's gonna be the first to take advantage of America?
Mm.
Who's gonna take the jump? Because whoever takes the jump first is going to be the winner. Like, they're going to be
Mm.
America's team. If
Mm.
if it's a single team going over to going into the Super League, like, that's, you become the Dallas Cowboys of America
Yeah,
for
yeah.
rugby league, right? Like,
Mm.
and then because you're gonna get fans from all over. You're gonna get Australians, you're gonna get New Zealanders, you're gonna get French, you're gonna get English. They're all gonna go, man, I like that team in America. That's pretty cool. I like that. It's different than Canada. Nothing against Canada, but I mean,
Mm.
America's America.
Mm.
And if you could certainly be able to build a foundation where you're capitalizing on the tremendous athletes here in America that are you know, not just, cast off from the NFL. Like, there's plenty of players that just don't get a shot that are, for one reason or another, that could absolutely kill it in the sport. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
familiar you are with American football, but I mean, there's a running back, Derrick Henry. He's just a beast. He's from Yulee, which is just north of Jacksonville. And,
Right.
like, he's just a monster. And, like, imagine someone like him playing rugby league. Like, it just creates, like, the thought of that just gives me chills, because I don't know that. I mean, it just creates an unbelievable dynamic that I don't think anybody's seen. He had,
Mm.
13 of those players on the field. Like, it would be unbelievable.
Mm. We're talking to Drew Slover, one of the founders and the current owner of the Jacksonville Axemen. They're about to enter their 20th season. And Drew, you brought this up. It's Las Vegas. So give us your assessment of what they're doing well and what they could do better, what they got right, what they got wrong.
I mean, look, as a rugby league fan, like, I love the fact that they're in Vegas. It's fantastic. I love rugby league so much that being able to see it live without having to go to Australia is fantastic. Um, I think the NRL, I think they're, for merchandise, viewers, just the like, you have all of this upside to be able to market if you can, but the challenge is that they're not. I have not seen them invest the time to understand the American and the challenges that you have with marketing the sport in America, and they're not putting the effort in, and so that's unfortunate, because I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, and I'll give you an example. Like, they use the term armor for pads, and, like, I had a meeting with their marketing team, and I'm like, look, no one in America refers to pads as armor. Period. You sound silly. Involved. There's better brain in Utah. Um, but they we were trying to figure out how to make it work, but the guidelines that we had, it just didn't. And it's really unfortunate, because that would have been a very, very epic game to watch. Like, I would have loved to see Pro versus DC. I think it would have been just epic. But it is what it is. But I mean, again, it's growing pains. Like, these are just things that we have to work through. And when you remember the the new board was only a year old at that point, maybe not even that. So there has to be. It's like any team sport. Like when you have, there's going to be some people that have to come and go, and then when they come in, when new people come into this environment, their expectations are going to be different. And so the hope is that as things evolve, if teams were to go away, that's fine. If they don't go away, and they we're all under the same kind of guidance and understanding, then I think it'll be fine. But again, it just takes time, and we haven't had that foundation before. As at least we did, but like the amount of people that were involved, it was small, and we have more people involved, and we've got really good advisors, and I think that we're going to build a better foundation now than we had in the past. And I don't know that the environment would have been. I don't know that we could have done what we're doing now 6 years ago, just because of the people involved. And so, again, I think we're in a really good spot.
We're back. Final part of our interview with Drew Slover from Jacksonville Axemen, who are about to enter their 20th season. I'll forewarn you what I just want to cover at the end here. First will be kind of like the international. We haven't touched on the international program much and what's happening. I know that not your direct responsibility anymore, I don't think, but just on what you've seen over your time involved in the game, and then we'll just finish up with what the future holds, I guess. But have the Hawks and their predecessors, have they sort of succeeded or failed on their own merits over the years, or are there things that the outside world could have done differently to encourage them more? Of course, Jason Moore was talking about having a World Cup in America at one stage. So how do you look back on that side of the sport over the last 20 years?
It's like Jason Moore are really unfortunate. There's been a lot of. I think a lot of people think that running a team and running an organization and putting on a big event is easy, and it's just not. And there's a lot of people that have gotten involved that just talk the talk and have absolutely no experience. And there's such a passion to get the sport. There's such a passion because we see what the sport can be, that people are willing to accept that. Oh yeah, okay, I think he knows what he's doing. And you're trying to take a jump the jump is too high and not realistic. I think once but from a USA Hawk standpoint, I think once we transition into trying to have a predominantly USA based team playing these games, I think it may not look as great because we're not smashing other teams. Having Americans playing for the US is what you want. You want those players to be able to come back to their teams and talk about this experience and take that professionalism, and it gives them something to strive for. When you have foreigners that have they qualify under a grandparent rule, like they're in and out. They're not doing anything for the domestic game, and so the hard part is dealing with that. And you want to win, and the critics will say, well, you didn't win this game or you didn't win that game. But the reality is the players are improving and the teams are improving, and the game itself is being played at a better level than it was 10 years ago in America. And to me, that is where you really start to win, because what America wants is we want to have American players representing the US and winning these games. And you can't do that overnight.
So this season, what do you expect from the season, and what's on the horizon for the sport in America over the next, say, 12 months, Drew?
Well, for the Axemen, I mean, my expectation every year is to is to win that last game of the season, right? So, if we don't, it's not successful. With a win, with a national championship win this year, we would be the winningest team active team in America, and maybe even the history. We'd have 5 national championships. So, um, I'm that's what I'm striving for. I want to get another championship, and the game would be hosted in this. The national championship will be hosted by the East Coast champion, and so um, it becomes pretty exciting the prospect of having another championship. And so it's going to be hard fought. I mean, the Rugby League United up in the Northeast is going to be very tough. Obviously, the teams in the West are going to be tough as well. So it's you've got competition like we haven't had in the past. So it's exciting.
Well, Drew, congratulations on 20 seasons, and I'm sure the listeners agree with me there. It's a fantastic effort. And
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I mean, look, I love the sport. It's I encourage anybody to come and check out our websites and become a fan, and hopefully you get some more followers, and and we can help grow this sport, whether it's the Axemen or the Tampa Mayhem or the Southwest Florida Copperheads or the DC Cavalry. It doesn't matter. Like anybody who can help support this sport from anywhere in the country, like that's how we grow and that's how we get better. So I appreciate the exposure and I appreciate you helping us out.
Talk to you again soon, Drew. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.